What does it truly take to shatter the ceiling of human potential? For most of us, the concept of the impossible feels like a distant peak shrouded in mist, a destination reserved for the genetically gifted, the extraordinarily lucky, or the hyperprivileged. We often look at world-class athletes, visionary entrepreneurs, and revolutionary artists as if they belong to a different species. We assume their achievements are the result of some magic ingredient that we simply do not possess. However, modern neuroscience and performance psychology have begun to pull back the curtain on these superhuman feats, revealing that the path to peak performance is not a mystery, but a sequence of biological and psychological steps that anyone can follow. In the pages that follow, we are going to embark on a journey through the mechanics of extraordinary achievement. This isn't just about working harder, it's about working in alignment with how your brain is actually wired. We will explore the hidden engines of intrinsic motivation and the specific protocols required to turn a vague ambition into a concrete reality. You will learn why your biggest obstacles aren't your lack of talent, but rather a lack of clarity in your goal setting and a misunderstanding of how your mind acquires new skills. We will dive deep into the science of grit, the architecture of creative thinking, and the specific neurochemical rewards that keep the world's highest achievers moving forward when everyone else quits. You will discover how to leverage your own biology to sustain effort over the long haul, how to bypass the frustration that kills most learning endeavors, and how to cultivate a mental environment where aha moments become a regular occurrence rather than a rare fluke. This book is a roadmap for anyone who feels they have more to give, but hasn't yet found the key to unlocking their full capacity. Whether you are looking to launch a global enterprise, master a complex new discipline, or simply push past the plateaus in your personal life, the insights ahead will provide the framework you need to reach your maximum potential and eventually achieve what you once thought was impossible. Before we dive into the specific strategies for peak performance, it is essential to establish a high-level understanding of the themes that anchor this work. This book is built on the premise that human excellence is a systematic process. We will move through four primary pillars: the discipline of goal setting, the mechanics of rapid learning, the neurobiology of creativity, and the psychological environment required for insight. At the heart of our exploration is the concept of intrinsic motivation, the internal drive that pushes us to act not for external rewards like money or fame, but for the sake of the challenge itself. We will examine how this drive is fueled by specific neurochemicals, most notably dopamine and norepinephrine, and how you can consciously trigger these responses to maintain momentum. You will also be introduced to the idea of flow, the ultimate state of consciousness where we feel our best and perform our best. Every chapter is designed to bring you one step closer to accessing this state consistently. We will look at how to structure your day to match your natural energy cycles, how to navigate the frustration phase of learning without giving up, and how to manipulate your physical environment to boost your creative output by as much as 50%. By the end of this journey, you will no longer view the impossible as a barrier. Instead, you will see it as a series of high, hard goals that can be systematically dismantled through grit, focused learning, and a deep understanding of your own cognitive architecture. This orientation serves as your foundation. The chapters that follow are the bricks and mortar of your new reality. Once you have identified the passions that move you and the purpose that gives your life meaning, you are faced with a daunting question. How do you actually get there? Passion is a wonderful starting engine, but it is not a steering wheel. To move from the realm of someday to the reality of today, you must master the science of goal setting. For decades, people believed that simply trying your best was the key to success. However, psychological research has proven that doing your best is actually a recipe for mediocrity. To achieve the impossible, you need a roadmap that is both ambitious and meticulously detailed. The power of specific targets was famously demonstrated in the late 1960s by psychologists Gary Latham and Edwin Locke. In a landmark study that changed the face of organizational psychology, they observed groups of lumberjacks working in the woods. They divided these workers into two distinct groups. The first group was given a vague, encouraging instruction: do your best and gather as much wood as you can. The second group was given no such fluff. They were assigned very specific, challenging quotas to meet. Crucially, neither group was offered any extra money or bonuses for their performance. There were no financial carrots dangling at the end of the day. The results were staggering. The lumberjacks who were working toward specific quotas consistently gathered significantly more wood than the group told to do their best. This study, which has been replicated across dozens of industries and thousands of subjects, proved a fundamental truth about the human brain. We are goal-seeking organisms. When we have a clear target, our focus narrows, our persistence increases, and our productivity skyrockets. Without a target, we drift. To apply this to your own life, you must understand the two types of goals required for peak performance. The first are what Latham calls high, hard goals, or HHGs. These are the major long-term milestones that define your journey. An HHG is a massive undertaking that might take years or even a decade to complete. It is the big thing you are working toward. For one person, an HHG might be earning a PhD in nutritional science. For another, it might be the complex process of founding and scaling a sustainable tech startup. If your purpose is the destination, your HHGs are the major cities you must pass through to get there. However, HHGs are often so large and distant that they can feel overwhelming. If you only focus on the mountain peak, the climb itself can become demoralizing. This is why you must break your HHGs down into clear goals. These are your daily or weekly targets. They are the small, manageable chunks of work that you can complete in a single sitting. For a writer whose HHG is to publish a 100,000-word novel, a clear goal might be write 500 words of Chapter 4 between 8:00 a.m. and 10:00 a.m. tomorrow morning. The beauty of clear goals lies in your neurochemistry. Every time you check a clear goal off your list, your brain releases a hit of dopamine. This isn't just a feel-good chemical, it is a molecule of motivation. Dopamine tells your brain, this was successful, let's do it again. By stacking small wins through clear goals, you create a self-sustaining loop of motivation that makes the long-term HHG feel achievable. But even with the best goals, the path to the impossible is paved with hardship. This is where grit becomes essential. Grit is the psychological stamina required to push through years of repetitive, often boring, and frequently difficult work. While some individuals seem to be born with an iron will, grit is actually a skill that can be developed and optimized. One of the most effective ways to cultivate grit is to work in harmony with your biological energy levels rather than fighting against them. Willpower is a finite resource. It functions much like a battery that drains as the day progresses. Every decision you make, from what to wear to how to respond to a difficult email, saps a little bit of your cognitive energy. This is why you must schedule your most challenging, grit-demanding tasks for the very beginning of your day, when your internal battery is at its peak. By tackling your frogs, the hardest tasks, in the morning, you ensure that your best energy is applied to your most important goals. As your energy naturally declines throughout the afternoon, you can shift toward more administrative or routine tasks. By aligning your goals with your biology, you reduce the friction of achievement and make the impossible a matter of daily practice. In our quest to achieve the impossible, we will inevitably encounter the learning gap. This is the space between where your current skills reside and where they need to be to reach your goals. When you enter a new field or attempt to master a complex subject, you will be bombarded with jargon, abstract concepts, and confusing data. This is the moment where most people quit. They feel frustrated, and they interpret that frustration as a sign that they aren't cut out for the task. However, one of the most important shifts you can make in your mindset is to realize that frustration is actually a biological prerequisite for learning. When you struggle to grasp a new concept, your brain releases norepinephrine. This chemical is often associated with stress, but its primary function in the brain is to signal a state of high alertness and neuroplasticity. Norepinephrine tells your neurons to pay attention because something important is happening. In other words, if you aren't feeling frustrated, you probably aren't learning anything new. To move through this frustration and achieve mastery, you can follow a proven 5-step process for learning almost anything. This system is designed to take you from a total novice to a functional expert in record time. The first step is a massive intake of information through reading. Specifically, you should aim to read 5 books on your chosen subject. But there is a strategy to this reading. The books should be arranged in increasing order of difficulty. Start with a popular, easy-to-read book that introduces the basic concepts. By the time you get to the 5th book, you should be reading something more technical or academic. During this phase, do not judge yourself for what you don't understand. Your only goal is to become familiar with the language of the field. You are building a mental map of the territory, not trying to memorize every detail. As you read, you will naturally develop a list of questions. This leads to the second step, seeking out experts. You don't need to land an interview with a world-famous pioneer or a Nobel Prize winner. In many cases, those people are too busy to give you the granular details you need. Instead, look for the people in the trenches, graduate students, junior researchers, or mid-level practitioners. These individuals are often more accessible and are usually eager to discuss their work. When you talk to them, avoid broad, generic questions. Don't ask a consciousness researcher, "What is the mind?" Instead, ask them to clarify a specific point from a paper they recently published. This shows respect for their expertise and yields much more valuable information. The third step involves filling in the blind spots in your knowledge. Every subject exists within a larger ecosystem. If you are studying animal behavior, for example, you cannot truly understand a single species in isolation. You must broaden your scope to look at the entire ecosystem, the climate, the food chain, and the geological history of the region. By zooming out to see the larger system, the smaller details of your specific subject will suddenly begin to make sense. You are looking for the context that gives the facts meaning. The fourth step is the truth filter. At this stage, you should have enough knowledge to begin questioning the information you've received. Actively seek out opinions that contradict what you have learned so far. If you've been reading about the benefits of a specific economic theory, find the strongest arguments against it. This forces your brain to synthesize conflicting data and prevents you from falling into the trap of confirmation bias. By the end of this step, you should be able to explain multiple sides of a debate and articulate exactly why you hold your current position. Finally, the fifth step is to find the narrative. Human beings are storytelling animals. Our brains are not designed to remember isolated facts. We are designed to remember cause and effect sequences. To solidify your learning, try to explain what you've learned to someone else as a story. When you successfully connect the dots into a narrative, your brain rewards you with a significant hit of dopamine. This reward doesn't just feel good. It encourages your brain to look for even more patterns. This creates a virtuous cycle where learning becomes its own reward, driving you deeper into the subject and closer to mastery. For centuries, creativity was viewed as a mystical gift, a divine spark bestowed upon a lucky few by the gods. Even today, many people believe that you are either born creative or you aren't. However, modern science has debunked this myth. Creativity is not a gift. It is a biological process involving specific networks in the brain. And more importantly, it is a skill that can be measured and improved. The value of this skill cannot be overstated. In 2016, the software giant Adobe conducted a massive survey of over 5,000 adults across 5 different countries to measure the impact of creativity on life satisfaction and professional success. The results were eye-opening. They found that people who identify as creative are significantly more fulfilled than those who don't, reporting happiness levels that are 34% higher than their non-creative peers. But the benefits aren't just emotional, they are financial as well. The survey revealed that creatives earn, on average, 13% more money than non-creatives. In the modern economy, the ability to solve problems creatively is one of the most valuable assets you can possess. To unlock this potential, we must understand what is happening inside the creative brain. Neurologically, creativity requires the coordination of three distinct networks: the executive attention network, the default mode network or imagination network, and the salience network. The executive attention network is what we use when we are focused on a specific task. It allows us to concentrate, follow a logical sequence, and make deliberate choices. This is the workhorse of the brain. The imagination network, on the other hand, is what takes over when our minds wander. It is active when we are daydreaming, reflecting on the past, or imagining future scenarios. In most people, these two networks are like a seesaw. When one is up, the other is down. When you are focused on a spreadsheet, your imagination is suppressed. When you are daydreaming, your focus is gone. The hallmark of the creative brain is the ability to keep both of these networks active simultaneously. A creative person can wander through a world of what-ifs, imagination, while simultaneously evaluating those ideas for their practical utility, attention. This coactivation allows for the birth of ideas that are both novel and useful. The third player in this triad is the salience network. Think of this as the traffic controller of the brain. Its job is to monitor the constant stream of information and ideas flowing through your mind and decide which ones are salient. That is, which ones are worth your conscious attention. The salience network is also responsible for a phenomenon called repetition suppression. This is a survival mechanism that helps us ignore familiar stimuli. It's why you don't notice the sound of your own air conditioner or the feeling of your clothes against your skin. Your brain suppresses these repeated signals so you can focus on new, potentially dangerous changes in your environment. However, in highly creative individuals, the salience network operates differently. It has a reduced level of repetition suppression. This means that creative people continue to notice the details and nuances in things that others have long since tuned out. They see the beauty in a weathered brick wall or the interesting pattern in a mundane conversation. Because they are taking in more novelty from the world around them, they have more raw material to work with when it's time to generate new ideas. By understanding these networks, we can begin to use specific protocols, which we will discuss in the next chapter, to turn on our creative machinery and see the world through a more original lens. We have all experienced the aha moment, that sudden, electric flash of insight where a solution to a problem appears out of nowhere. Archimedes famously had his eureka moment in a bathtub. Newton supposedly had his under an apple tree. For a long time, we thought these moments were random, but neuroimaging has shown that insight is actually the result of a very specific brain state that we can learn to cultivate. At the center of this process is a part of the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC. The ACC is a key component of the salience network we discussed earlier. In studies where participants were asked to solve word puzzles, researchers found that the ACC lights up with activity just moments before a participant experiences a flash of insight. The ACC acts like a sensitive antenna, picking up on faint, distant associations in the brain that the logical, linear mind might miss. The most fascinating discovery in this research is the factor that most influences the sensitivity of the ACC: your mood. It turns out that a positive mood is the single most powerful booster for creativity and insight. When you are in a bad mood, if you are stressed, angry, or fearful, your brain shifts into an analytical, survival-oriented mode. This makes perfect biological sense. If you are being chased by a predator, you don't need to be creative or look for weird possibilities. You need to find the most familiar, proven path to safety. Stress narrows your focus and forces you to stick to what you know. This is why you can never seem to come up with a creative solution when you are staring at a looming deadline with a pit of anxiety in your stomach. Conversely, when you are in a good mood, your brain feels safe. This sense of safety allows the ACC to relax and expand its search parameters. It begins to pay attention to those weird, non-obvious possibilities. A positive mood essentially gives your brain permission to play, and play is the fundamental state of creativity. So how do we cultivate this insight-ready mood? It isn't about forced happiness. It's about specific practices that lower stress and increase psychological safety. One of the most effective is a daily gratitude practice. Because our brains have an innate negativity bias, we are wired to look for danger. We naturally focus on what is going wrong. By taking 5 minutes each day to write down 10 things you are genuinely grateful for, you are essentially rewiring your brain to notice the positive. Over time, this lowers your baseline stress levels and keeps your ACC primed for insight. Other powerful tools include mindfulness meditation, regular physical exercise, and ensuring you get high-quality sleep. Beyond internal mood, your external environment also plays a massive role in creativity. Specifically, we need space and solitude. In a fascinating 2012 study conducted at the University of Utah, researchers took a group of participants into the wilderness for 4 days. These individuals were completely disconnected from their phones, computers, and the constant noise of modern life. After 4 days in nature, the participants were given standard tests of creativity. The result? Their scores jumped by a staggering 50%. This tells us that the always-on nature of modern society is a creativity killer. To achieve the impossible, you must build fences around your time. You need periods of deep solitude where your mind can wander without being interrupted by a notification or a request. Whether it's a long walk in a park or a weekend retreat in the woods, giving your brain the space to breathe is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity for anyone who wants to perform at the highest level. When you combine a positive internal mood with a spacious external environment, you create the perfect laboratory for the impossible to become real. As we come to the end of this exploration, it is important to reflect on the core realization that underpins every strategy we've discussed. The impossible is not a fixed boundary, but a moving target. What was considered impossible a century ago, flight, instant global communication, the eradication of certain diseases, is now the foundation of our daily lives. The same principle applies to your personal journey. The goals that feel out of reach today are simply the HHGs that you haven't yet dismantled into clear daily actions. We have seen that peak performance is a multi-layered process. It begins with the architecture of your goals, using the science of Latham and Locke to move past doing your best and toward specific, quota-driven achievement. It requires the cultivation of grit, learned through the management of your daily energy cycles and the strategic use of dopamine rewards. It demands a commitment to the 5-step learning process, where frustration is embraced as a sign of progress rather than a reason to quit. And finally, it relies on the neurobiology of creativity, understanding how to toggle between focus and imagination, and how to use mood and environment to trigger the insights that change the world. The practical takeaways are clear. Start by defining your high, hard goals, then obsessively check off your daily clear goals. When you feel the sting of frustration while learning something new, lean into it, knowing that your brain is currently rewiring itself for mastery. Protect your mood as if your career depends on it, because, as the Adobe study shows, it actually does. Practice gratitude, seek out nature, and give yourself the gift of solitude. Ultimately, this knowledge matters because it shifts the power back into your hands. You are no longer a passenger to your biology. You are the pilot. The impossible is achieved one 500-word session, one morning task, and one aha moment at a time. As you move forward, remember that the journey to your maximum potential is not a sprint, but a series of deliberate, scientifically backed steps. The peak is high and the climb is hard, but the roadmap is now in your possession. It's time to start climbing. For more book summaries for free, install Zyroverse.